Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I was just saying my husband's putting my kids to sleep upstairs, but it doesn't sound like they're very near to going to sleep. They're very, ah,
Will they be coming down to
no, no, I
no?
don't think so. No. I'm off duty now. It's not my problem anymore.
Oh,
Done.
all good.
It's
All,
really nice to see you and to have you on to chat this evening. I think that first met you virtually at a membership talk that you did with Vicky, who is my mentor. And I came away from that talk just feeling so inspired by you and so interested in everything that you had to say. And I just felt like I wanted to share that with the people that follow me and to give them a bit more of an insight into what you do and how everybody can help kind of promote and support what you do. So I think if you could just tell us a little bit about what it is that you actually do, and
yeah,
then we can get into the kind of big decisions, change, all that kind of good stuff.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura, for inviting me on. And yeah, so I'm Sarah, and I am a coach. I'm a life and business coach for queer women. So women from the LGBTQIA plus community primarily, although I do work from women with women of all genders and sexualities, so people of all genders and women of all sexualities as
Yeah.
well. And I'm also a trainer, and I'm kind of like, oh, am I going to say this? But yeah, I suppose an educator as well to a degree around inclusion, so LGBTQIA plus inclusion, equality, diversity, and specifically, which is where we sort of cross paths, helping small business owners, community leaders, content creators to be more inclusive in their businesses. So how do you create more welcoming, safe and inclusive spaces for people from the LGBTQIA plus community?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of unconscious discrimination going on. Not directly, not deliberately, but maybe we can alienate people from the LGBTQIA plus community without fully always appreciating that or realizing it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the sort of pieces of work that I'm doing at the moment, which is going out into different communities, speaking to people, and offering training and workshops and masterclasses all around, how can you be more inclusive in your businesses? And ultimately, of course, that reflects out into your life as well, and so that's one of my sort of big passions right now is doing that sort of work, which I absolutely love.
It's so good to hear that that is your passion and that you found that thing that you want to be doing. So we'll get into the work in a little bit, but for you, when did this become what you knew you wanted to do? Because I know it's not what you've always done.
Sure, no. So I had a 30-year corporate career.
Well, that old enough there, nonsense.
Thank you. Where I worked basically in large corporate organisations, delivering workshops and training, I guess, doing an HR type of role as a senior manager. And although I was doing people development and helping people really realise their potential and, sourcing training and all that kind of stuff, I guess what was missing for me, as often is in large corporate organisations, are sort of when cost cutting is done and when decisions are being made about, how we're going to spend our resources and invest where we're going to invest. There was a lot of talk about investing in people, but the reality was that, it was all very, the investments weren't really made. It's a lot of lip service paid to it. And after a while, I just got quite drained and exhausted, I suppose, often for fighting the corner, of the sort of the people development kind of area of the business. So it was a little bit before my 50th birthday, actually. And I often wonder if that had, you know, if that was something, and I guess it was consciously and subconsciously. It was a big milestone for me in my life. And I decided that I just needed and wanted to, yeah, feel more fulfilled, I guess, and started looking at my options. I trained as a life coach. I did, although I'd sort of done corporate coaching, so coach managers and leaders in my job for quite a long time. I didn't have a formal coaching qualification.
Yeah.
So I trained as a coach, a transformational life coach, got my ICF accreditation. And while I was going through that process, as anyone will know, when you do your own coach training, you learn so much about yourself. You learn about, you know, your own kind of limiting beliefs and all the stories that you tell yourself. You learn about, yeah, really what it feels like when you have a strong vision for your future. And all of those things started coming through for me during my coach training. And I was kind of like, so grateful for all of that, but knew then that I had to. So I went part-time initially in my corporate career. And then sort of about 18 months later, I left for good, and yeah, just worked for myself since then. So yeah, that was my sort of big change in my life, really, going self-employed and learning what the hell that was all about. You know, that was another massive learning curve that I hadn't expected. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can 100% relate to all of that. So I was also in people development before I did this and went on a similar journey. And that launching into the self-employment world is a roller coaster for sure, for sure. So you decided you wanted to be a life coach and you'd done all that work and you knew that you had that vision. How did you then, the word that we all have to use, don't we, like niche down into knowing that you wanted to support the LGBTQIA plus community?
Yeah, that was a kind of journey in itself, really, to be honest. I think initially one of the challenges for me was like the fear of niching, you know, that sort of, I was like, well, I didn't want to eliminate anybody from potentially being, you know, somebody I could support, somebody I could help, somebody that I could work with. So I think there was that aspect for me. There was a couple of fears, actually. That was one of them. And the other one was, I mean, at that point, so we're talking about four or 5 years ago now, when I sort of really went full on into my coaching business. I was out about my sexual orientation. So I was out as a gay woman. I hadn't fully been out in my corporate career. And I guess one of my other fears was like, when I'm actually saying that this is what I do as my work, that is it. You know, there is nowhere to hide in terms of, you know, and I've been on my own journey of loving and accepting my sexuality, my sexual orientation. You know, I work with quite a lot of women who carry shame around that part of who they are and really struggle to live fully out, you know, and then that goes for a lot of people in the LGBTQIA plus community. They might not hide that they're gay or bisexual or whatever sexuality or gender identity they have, but they still carry a lot of fear and shame around it, you know, because the world is not an equal place for the queer community. There's still a lot of discrimination, there's a lot of stereotyping, there's a lot of inequality that exists out there. So it's a big deal to kind of fully step into that, like I did, in terms of this is me, this is the work I do. And so I had a couple of fears there about niching down. So what I did initially was work with women in midlife who were, you know, going through transition, going through change, whatever that might be, and working with them to support them with that, which, you know, I loved. And I had some gay clients at the time. And then I niched again. So I was kind of like, I spent a bit of time in this place of, shall I go for it? Shall I go for it? And I had friends. I didn't really, I think I might have talked to my brother a little bit about it, but I had friends who were definitely sort of sucking their teeth in a kind of, are you sure you want to do that? You know, when I said, I'm thinking about, you know, niching down and working only, you know, in terms of my marketing, and I don't not work with anyone, you know, I welcome anybody I feel that I can support. But are you sure you want to kind of make this statement that your niche is LGBTQIA plus women for your one-to-one work? And I was like, there was quite a few of them that said that, you know, you're going to get enough clients, you know, oh, you know, are you sure it's a good idea? Is there, you know, is there enough people out there and kind of thing? So that was quite hard to kind of still go for it.
Internal, that's kind of an internal belief that they had, that there wasn't enough, or that, you know, almost like a marginalisation, isn't it? Of like, well, that community is so small and so almost insignificant, almost, is that the thought process of like, there's not going to be enough for you.
Yeah. It was interesting, some of their responses. And I don't know, because they were, I mean, a lot of my friends are from the queer community.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, the responses. And of course, there are so, and I think also, as you'll know yourself, you know, people, certainly then, and I think that's possibly changed in the last 18 months, but they were thinking about one-to-one, face-to-face, local work, I guess, as well. And of course, you look across the whole world, there's so many people out there in all sorts of niches that, you know, we can support online. So
and I've definitely come across so many more niches now that I'm in the online world, and all sorts of things I would have never thought of. So I think that's
yeah.
So how did you know that you were, so there's something that I get asked a lot about, because I talk a lot about making a big decision, is how did you know it was the right time? Because there's always a moment, isn't there, where you're like, right, now I have to do the thing. What was it for you, for those, first of all, leaving your job, and then secondly, niching down? What were those moments sort of triggered by?
I think leaving the job was a bit of a now or never moment. Yeah, it was like, what the F am I doing, you know? And like I say, when I started the life coach training and I'd got into that, it was like, wow, you know, there is so much more fulfillment, so much more excitement that I can get, you know, and looking at my values and, you know, was my work life aligned with my values and those sorts of things. It was just it was kind of like glaringly obvious, really, that I had this other opportunity, even though it felt scary.
Yeah.
And then in terms of my niche, I think that was really about getting to a point where I fully loved and accepted myself, and the change that made for me, and wanting that for other people who are, you know, I did a survey before Christmas now, in the wellness and coaching industry for queer women, primarily, specifically, really. And about 32% of the women that responded aren't out in their business. And I know from experience, I'm not saying they're not doing a great job and they're not, you know, really, you know, having success and all of that stuff. But when you're kind of holding back that part of you and afraid to share it, it does have an impact. I really believe that, you know, since I've been able to bring all of myself into my work.
I think it's also like any sort of vulnerability, isn't it, when you aren't sharing that, and if you are putting on some sort of facade or a bit of a mask, you aren't going to come across as your whole self. And I think people will pick up on that.
And so many of us, myself included, we're talking about authenticity. We're talking about living, you know, as your authentic self, not being afraid of the parts of you that maybe aren't perfect, you know, or in your mind they're not perfect. And of course, we're all imperfectly perfect, aren't we? You know, that is what makes us engaging. It's what connects us with other people, you know, being able to share who we truly are, and the struggles and the shit that's happened along the way in our lives, you know, and it helps other people to say, they might get us, they might understand me. Whereas if we're not allowing some of that stuff into, you know, the way that we're expressing ourselves and all of those things, I think it can have an impact. Yeah,
definitely. So now with the work that you are doing, you have these two strands. One is to help the queerpreneur community, and one is to help people like me who want to be more inclusive in the way that they market. Because I think that my market is mainly probably cisgendered, white, straight, same thing, women, which is great, and that's who's coming to me. But like you, I don't want it to be exclusive of anybody else. And so the work that you do to educate helps, I guess, people like me to be more open to all if they choose to work with somebody like me, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. And make you a possibility for them, to be honest. I don't want to generalize too much on this. But I know from my own experience, I know from a lot of other people that I talk to in the LGBTQI plus community, we will look for indications that you're a safe place for us. So you might have the perfect course that we've been looking for, or you might have the perfect product or service or, you know, workshop or whatever it might be. And it's going, you know, it's going to really help us to be able to see that we're not going to come on your course or join your workshop or even work with you one-to-one and not feel and not be harmed, basically. It really does, you know, come down to that in terms of even some of the things that might feel quite innocuous, is that the right word, when it's like so small you think it doesn't really matter. Like asking me if I've got a husband or a boyfriend. And we get very used to this, you know, very used to these sorts of things happening. But every time someone asks that, the message is that, you know, it's expected that everybody is straight. And so it's kind of like that sort of, it is quite harmful, and more, it depends, you know, on individuals, but to everybody, I'd say it's like, it's a slight, it's sort of a bit jarring. And then of course we're in a position where we have to choose whether we come out to you or not. And you probably wouldn't, in a lot of cases, you wouldn't even know that that was going on inside us. And if someone is struggling with accepting themselves fully, then that brings up that shame, that sort of old hurt, kind of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not equal, I'm less than in some way. So there, you know, that's a small example of really being mindful and learning to be mindful that you don't know what someone's sexual orientation is or their gender identity. You know, do they identify as female, male, non-binary, or a different way until you know. And that is the hardest thing, and I'm sure we talked about it in the workshop that I delivered that you went to, the training that I delivered, is to let go of our assumptions about looking at people and deciding what their sexual orientation is. I mean, it's like, in a way, it's kind of like, why would we do that? Because the world, that's the way the world is constructed, you know, it's the societal conditioning and norms. It's all about being heterosexual, binary genders. I've gone off.
No, it's great. And you shared with us a really good graphic that actually I will repost if you can send it to me, but the one with the wheel of privilege. And as a person who fits all of the privilege categories apart from being not a man, it kind of brings it to light again. You're like, oh, I'm not in any way trying to be exclusive of anybody and discriminatory, but the way I just am in the world can make other people feel in some way less than and other. And so I guess my question is, how do I express all of this love that I have for everybody who also has love back and compassion in a way that is also then not excluding the people who probably will work with me. That sounds very complicated, but how do you do both, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it is a bit of a journey in a way, in terms of, I'm really conscious, it's probably about the third time I've said journey, and that's very like coaching, isn't it? But it's this, in terms of this allyship, you know, journey. And I think that the world is changing. I really do believe that, you know, Instagram, for example, recently have given us the option to add our pronouns to our bio. And more leaders and sort of people that are really in the public eye, whether they're community leaders, whether they're coaches with big communities, that sort of stuff, they're starting to really encourage, you know, everybody to think more about inclusion. So I think that at the moment there is this sort of like, we're definitely going through this period of time where there are people that will naturally, and I think, you know, and I think it will always be the case, naturally certain people will be drawn to them. So, but I think, like I said earlier, I think it's also important to know that some of your services or products might be ideal for someone from the queer community. So I would say that the first things to do really are to think about, in terms of wanting to be more welcoming for LGBTQIA people, it's use your pronouns, share your pronouns, and understand why you're doing that, what that means. I know we talked about this in the workshop, you know, so it's not a lip service thing. It's not just add them on because everyone else is doing it and it's a bit of a trend. This is about demonstrating that you recognise there's more than two genders. There's more than he and him and his and she and her and she and her and hers in the world. There's, you know, the world isn't binary. So by sharing your pronouns, you're demonstrating that you get that. And then, you know, writing it somewhere, you know, if you do want to welcome people from the LGBTQIA plus community to talk to you, to find out if you might be the right coach for them or whatever service you offer, say it, you know, on your bio. Or, you know, it's been Pride Month, you know, Pride isn't just for June, Pride is for the whole bloody year, right? So it's not too late, it's never too late. And, you know, you can do it any time of year. Create a post on your Instagram grid about the fact that you want to welcome in people from the LGBTQIA plus community. And I think it's absolutely okay to say, you know, if someone does approach you and they do want to work with you, so I'm learning, you know, I'm learning about this. If you're good with that and I'm good with that and we feel like a good fit, then, you know, let's work together. And I really do feel, and there's a couple of people watching from the LGBTQIA plus community, I do really feel that we get it, you know, we get that this is something that has been off people's radars. It's not great, it's not really good enough. I'll say that again, it isn't good enough, but things are changing. You know, more people are recognising that they are excluding people and they might be discriminating. And so, you know, taking action, doing something about it, you know, that is allyship. Allyship isn't, you know, paying lip service or saying, well, I'm not homophobic. That's not enough. You know, it's a bit like being, you know, anti-racist and not racist. Being not racist is not enough. Being not homophobic isn't enough. We need to be anti-homophobic or nearly, you know, kind of like take action. So, yeah.
As you say, it's about not being afraid to take any action, because sometimes I think that people get worried to do anything in case they get it wrong, but actually that's worse, just not doing anything. It's better to get wrong
that's what I was sort of saying. It's like, I still misgender people sometimes, you know, and I'm from the LGBTQIA plus community myself. I spent a lot of time with women, I suppose, lesbian women, gay women, and not really taking all, you know, and I feel ashamed to admit this, but it's true, not taking that much notice of the rest of my LGBTQIA plus family. I've had to learn a lot, and I'm still learning a lot, and that will continue. But kind of avoiding it and kind of going, oh, what happens if I say the wrong thing? Or, you know, avoiding the discomfort is no way is that going to create change. The only way we're ever going to get the equality and the inclusion and the diversity that we all want is by being uncomfortable and going through that process and learning together. And I think that, you know, like I say, all the queer people I know get that, and, you know, do it with compassion, do it with understanding, and we're there for it, absolutely. So yeah.
Thank you. Those are some really useful and practical tips, which is really, really good to have and to take away. I've got a couple more questions about change, and then I'll let you go because I know you've only got half an hour.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who is on the verge of making a big life change? What would you say to them to do?
I think a couple of things that come to mind for me is, like, really try and connect with the version of you in 10 years time, you know, and, you know, what would that wiser, older you say to you right now? Yeah. I think that would be one thing. And the other thing is, like, what are you choosing? You know, if you choose not to do that thing or not to go for it, then it is a choice, you know. So what are you giving up by not doing it? So kind of like, I love journaling. So they would be the things that come to mind for me around that.
Amazing. And when you're making a decision, do you tend to go more with your heart, your head, or your gut?
Yeah, I think definitely in the past it was head, and I've really learned, like, probably since doing my life coach training, actually, I've really learned to tune in to it all. So yeah, I think they're all, like, amazing in areas of intelligence, aren't they, in our body? So yeah, all of it.
And is there anything else that we should know from you about making big decisions that you think is really important to share?
I think, and this is again a bit of a cliche, but I really think it's true, like, you're never ready, so don't wait till you're ready. I think would be what I would say. If it feels scary, that's normal. Know that that's normal, because it always does.
Exactly. And of course, work with a life coach to help you to get through.
And of course, work with a life coach. Yes, got two great
ones. It really helps. And we're such advocates for coaching because we love it, and we've had lots ourselves. So
yeah, God, yeah. I always have my own coach, like, for as long as I've been doing it. Yeah, totally.
So, where can we find you, and what can we do to work with you if we are interested in more?
Yeah, so Instagram is probably where I'm most active, at Sarah Taylor Coaching. I do have a website as well, which is sarah-taylor.co.uk. And I have an inclusion guide that I can send to anybody. So if you want to drop me a message, ask me for it. It's an LGBTQIA plus inclusion guide. It's like a checklist of all kind of like the key things to be thinking about when you're starting out, thinking about how can I be more inclusive in my business. So drop me a note and I'll pass that to you, a link to it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Amazing. Thank you.
Wonderful.
It was really good to chat, and I hope you have a nice rest of your evening.
And you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was going to say there's any football on that my husband might be watching, but I don't really know. I don't know if you like football.
I have no idea.
I was just pretty much got this thing next to my phone, which is the big football wall chart. Anyway, the boys like it a lot. So it was really good to chat, and speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Cheers.